If the price is too low, it's too good to be true.
Big tip for couples that are listening out there. If you're hiring a designer and they have not even talked to you about spatial planning, they've not even talked to you about layouts, to me, that's a red flag.
I'm like, show me your house. She's like, what? I'm like, I literally want to see how you decorated your house, because I want guests to walk into a space and really feel like, oh, this is so that. I had a leather belt on. I took a pair of scissors, cut my belt, and used it as a napkin ring. He goes, that's it, perfect.
Welcome to For Real I Do with Brittany Ellis, the unfiltered side of weddings. From planning truths to vendor insights to navigating design, culture, and family dynamics, this is for couples who crave clarity and vendors ready to elevate. Your insider pass with just a little oversharing.
Well, hello, Miss Brittany.
Hi, Miss Brittany.
The Brittany's.
That's right.
Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. It's beautiful today.
Yes,
Beautiful in
yes,
South Florida.
Here in South Florida and Magic, where everybody wants to be.
That's right.
So, Britt, before we dive in, share with our lovely audience, for those who are unfamiliar with you, just a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing with the fabulous Petal production.
Sure. So I am originally from Columbus, Ohio, and I came down to Miami for college in '04. So it's been a really long time, but all throughout college, I knew I wanted to be in the event industry. Mm-hmm. So I've had the great pleasure to do a lot of different roles. So I have been a venue manager. I have been a kosher caterer, director of operations, believe it or not. And most importantly, I was a planner for a very, very long time. I originally always wanted to be a planner, and I think that it gave me a lot of insight on how to service planners the correct way, because I was once in their shoes. So I always used Petal, and I would bring my brides there, and we would go throughout the decor process. And then finally, when I wanted to start a family, I decided to move to the vendor side of things. So I've been with Petal now for almost 10 years. And I am full-time design and sales. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I meet with the planners and with the couples, and I help curate their design proposal and process, as well as execute it the weekend of the event.
How do you feel that your background, which first off, I actually had no idea that you had a culinary background.
Yes.
You weren't a lot of hats, which is awesome.
That's right.
I mean, how do you think that has supported? I mean, obviously our paths crossed a number of years ago, and right off the gate, I loved two things about you. I loved the fact that you could, in a very fun, I felt like theatrical way, could visualize an event for a couple with, quite frankly, not even the need for a mood board or a rendering right away. It was really an immersive storytelling that you were so good at being able to capture the vision and be able to translate that. And I think the second thing was the fact that I didn't actually know that you had a ton of planning background until like recently. But how do you feel like that has really supported you in terms of the design? Like, because I could list off obviously the things that make you all different, but what do you think that ultimately that really helps with when you're like building your relationships with your planner partners?
I think really it's about big picture, right? There are hundreds of florists to choose from in this market and beyond. I try to take an approach as a big picture. So how can myself and the Petal team support the caterer and make that food and beverage part of the decor experience? How can I support the entertainment company and make that, music and audio part and lighting part of the experience? So because I have experience in different fields, I'm able to kind of zoom out and say, like, to me, it's of course about the flowers. It's always the flowers, but like, I care how the napkin's folded. I care if there's lines at the buffet. So how can we bring in aesthetically appealing ways that all of the vendors on the project shine? Because if they shine, we shine.
Right.
And ultimately that results in reoccurring business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I have literally seen your team come on site and like steam linens. Like you really do care about every single detail. And I think that that actually supports with a lot of couples. I think sometimes there's a little confusion and no shame, because I know that this is their first experience, hopefully, first experience going through this. And I think the primary difference of what you're describing is this is what we would call, a full-blown design firm, as opposed to someone that's going to come in and decorate your space.
That's right.
And I think that what couples often are doing, and maybe they don't have a planner, or maybe they're starting a planner, but they're in the new stages and they're kind of shopping around different design firms or different decorators, but not really knowing the difference. But then they get the invoice and they're like, oh, there's such a huge difference. I'm getting such a savings here. What would you tell couples just in terms of maybe having some intentional dialogue maybe between them before they start just kind of like randomly reaching out to people? Like, how can they hone in on knowing, quite frankly, the difference of what they're going to ultimately end up needing?
That's right. That's a good question. I think if we comparatively think about other industries that have a quarterback on their project. So, for example, in home building, right? You have a general contractor that's going to help put all the beautiful hardware for your kitchen in front of you, because they've done the homework of this is available, this fits the color palette, and it fits your budget, rather than you like going down the rabbit hole of finding, an oven. Let the professionals guide you. So I would really look, when you approach the wedding phase of selecting vendors, is how much do you want to be involved? I hate to use the word micromanage because it seems negative, but are you willing to interview vendors, multiple for chairs or for napkins, or hand it over to a team of people that are going to do all these pre-selected options for you and just put them in front of you and you pick A, B, or C? So really, depending on your work schedule, if you're a student, if you are new in your career and work crazy hours, is finding a quarterback that can really help guide you along the way so that you don't have to segment out all of these different decisions.
Yeah. I love the way that you put that. See what I mean by theatrical? Like, she can give, like, she's such a good storyteller, but it really does help to just bring the vision home, because, to that point, I always tell couples, especially with planning, what checklist planners do, I call it checklist planners. I don't consider myself a checklist planner. A checklist planner, quite frankly, you could go on ChatGPT and give it the prompts and it could spit out a custom checklist for you. And to some degree, you could probably, I guess, do that with design. But you have to really think about, what is your threshold? What is the bandwidth that you actually have to dedicate to the wedding? Because oftentimes couples get really excited in the beginning stages. You're newly engaged. It's exciting to you to play designer, right? But when it really comes down to it, there's a difference between creating a mood board and an aesthetic and a vibe and then actually implementing that.
Right.
I guess one of the things I would ask you also is vendor green flags and red flags.
Yeah.
I mean, how do people distinguish the difference,
If the price is too low, it's too good to be true. A lot of times couples, and I will come to me and say, hey, thank you so much, but we feel like this particular priced item is too high. We have competitive quotes. And I encourage that. They did their homework. They did their due diligence. I would say 9 times out of 10, it comes back to me. Because, again, if you're saving $2 on the same chair elsewhere, but the headache that you're going to have have a different truck or a different check to cut, a different payment schedule to manage to save the $2 on 200 chairs, for the $400, it's not worth the effort. And know that if I bring in a particular item, whether it be a tablecloth or a chair or a charger plate or a bar, I am responsible for any damage beforehand or after the fact. I assume that responsibility. So I think that, to circle back to your question, the red flag would be if the price seems too competitive, it's probably for a reason. They're probably skipping over a step to be too competitive in the market, right? Do they put out the linens for you? Do they fold the napkins? Do they polish the glassware? The likelihood of that is probably not. But for a couple extra dollars, we would, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, we have an event coming up in Montana, and one of the biggest things that we were learning as we were going is that I'm not a big fan of the yes person, the person that just says like, yeah, no problem, yes, of course, we can do that, yes, of course, without giving like the full picture.
That's right.
And I think sometimes that can be a little, just, you know, clients don't understand how to take that, right? They just assume, oh, you got it, you got it. And so back to, they're going to source the linen, but they may not have dedicated the labor staff to then throw it on the table.
That's right.
You got to love it, because it's like, then it boils down to the planner. It's like everybody looks at me and I'm like, I'm not putting the linens out.
Yeah.
I'm not like striking them after the event's over and bagging them. Like, to some degree, you have to understand, my team's been up with you since God knows what time for hair and makeup. Like, we are literally your event producers. We are not then going to like turn into like labor crews and fill that gap. And so I would say ownership is a really big definitive difference between essentially someone who's going to come in and decorate your event to someone who's going to come in and take full ownership of the design, aesthetics, and then the implementation on site.
That's right. And I think going back to my house, you know, scenario or that comparison is that, let's say you had a general contractor come in and they mood boarded and did all of your renders and you've been working them with for a year, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I bought my Italian marble in Italy myself. It's being delivered here tomorrow and you can install it. That contractor is going to have a lot of questions. Did you buy enough? What color's the grout? What size are the pieces? So by piecemealing your wedding weekend together and not letting it fall under one umbrella, sometimes it creates more chaos than it does saving a couple $100 here and there.
Oh, absolutely. We literally created a whole separate service offering in our company for this exact situation. We called it Creative Director, because essentially it's like if you have one person that's providing design, but then it's only certain elements, and then you've got your DJ providing lighting, and then this person's doing the stationery. It's like, in order to get a cohesive design at the end of the day, like, those puzzle pieces have to somehow be connected.
That's right.
And so I really think that that's been the experience that I've obviously had with you, and that couples should look out for when they're talking to decorators, is be mindful of, again, how much time, energy, effort are you actually going to spend when it comes to curating a look? Because picking swatches out and picking linens out, there's a point where, dare I say, it stops becoming fun.
Yeah.
It stops becoming like fun, and it starts becoming like, when did I take on a second full-time job?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like not enjoyable
Exactly.
anymore.
And I want it to be fun, right? Like, for me, this is somewhat of a family business. My husband's been with Petal Productions for almost 20 years. So I get to work with him every weekend. So like, it's an interesting dynamic because he has to do his job. He has to do what his proposal says, and he has to make the planner and the client happy, but he also has to make me happy. So I have to love it, and I have to love it to show up time and time again and to do the 18-hour days. So I think that in guiding couples and picking a partner is trust. I don't expect a family to trust me based off my Instagram. I will earn their trust along the way and along the process. And hopefully, whether that's a 6-month process or a year process, come wedding weekend, I've heard it. It's my favorite quote. It's going to be a tattoo. I trust whatever the Brittnys think. I hear it 10 times a wedding weekend, and then we're able to collaborate and make small changes that hugely affect the guest experience because we've gained that trust.
Absolutely. And I mean, for all my type A brides out there, I feel like I've got a lot of type A clients, and I love that. I think that there's the dynamic changing too, where like the grooms are now being
Oh yeah.
which is super fabulous. It used to just be like the grooms would like awaken up to like talk about like the food and
The
like
bar,
the music
yeah.
and the bar, and like that was it. And it was like, okay, you can leave now. And now they're like actively involved on like Zoom calls and budget discussions and design discussions and the guest experience curation, which I really love. I mean, maybe you can give your 2 cents on like why that is, but I think that really them being able to connect with their vendor team and build that trust and have that ability to step out of planning mode and just effectively be present that weekend. Because I've seen it go one way where you're like, man, they're not going to get out of planning mode.
Yeah.
They're just not going to do it. And like, who am I? Like, this is your wedding. If you want to be micromanaging it all weekend, like, kudos to you. But it goes by so quickly.
That's right.
And you're investing 6 figures, sometimes more, 7 figures on a wedding weekend. And if you couldn't be present, it's like, what was the real ROI on that experience?
Right. That's right. I have a lot of couples that the wedding weekend fades. They either travel on their honeymoon, and then we get that email like, hey guys, do you want to meet for coffee? And I'm like, oh no, is something wrong? They just miss us. They just like miss having to make a decision because all the decisions have been made and all they are is like waiting on their photo and video to come back. And they're like, Britt, what do I do now?
Zoom winding.
Yeah, what do we do? What do we do? Can we talk about something? And I'm like, really? We're good.
See you at the next one.
Yeah, exactly.
See you at the next one. I was going to ask you because one of the questions I get from couples a lot is, how much should I budget for design, or what are they? And you know, I try to encourage them to at least have a baseline understanding of what they resonate with, because I've often heard from like really amazing greats in our industry that even though they're highly creative and they're highly effective, if you approach them and you literally have nothing, like not even a thought process of a potential idea, that it becomes really difficult to develop. And then it becomes even harder to then figure out what a price point range is going to be. What is your advice to couples and families? Because I get this question all the time, is that they'll look at, for example, they'll look at my Pinterest board or my Instagram, excuse me, and they'll be like, hey, like, how much did they spend?
Right.
And it's like, well, you're looking at like a single image.
Exactly.
You have no idea how much they spent on the food or like the entertainment, or like, you know, you're almost trying to get an understanding of budget from an image. How can they figure out how much is reasonable to spend? Like, what is even a starting range? I know the market's just crazy now, but it's like, what would your advice be?
You know, it's really interesting because 10 years ago, it was the elephant in the room, right? Like, don't ask what the budget is. It seems rude or it seems self-servicing. And again, I'm going back to houses. I don't know, maybe I have the housing itch.
It's gonna be your next career.
But if you were to hire a real estate agent, the first thing they would ask you is, what is your budget? Because they're not gonna waste time showing you $4 million homes that you're gonna fall in love with. And then you're like, oh, actually my budget's $400,000. And then they show you a $400,000 home, but you can't get the $4 million one out of your house. So everything is a letdown. You feel like you're not getting what you want because we started too high. So I've recently started asking. And I think having an internal conversation with your families about what is an appropriate investment, and I will never push you out of your comfort zone, but I don't want to underwhelm you in that first round of decor, because it's like, oh, this is all she had. I'm like, well, I didn't want to scare you off, right? So I think being honest and transparent, and then we can help guide you. So if you say food to me is really not that important, but decor really is, that we can start there. Or entertainment, or photo and video, or anything. It's a collaborative effort. I also think that establishing those budget guidelines, and it can be a range, should come into play before selecting a venue. A lot of times you select a venue and maybe you overextend, or you select a venue that's more moderately priced because you want it to be transformed. So thinking about venues that are already aesthetically pleasing, or they don't have to add much to, or a venue that is moderately priced because you want to come in and drape all the spaces, carpet the spaces. So there's two ways to look at that. So I think the earlier the budget conversation, the better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, just to give context to couples as well, like literally if you're one of my brides, one of the first things that we do, I don't even actually greenlight anything until we've priced out the entire wedding. I'm talking down to the permit fees, estimated everything that could be potentially a cost associated with your event. And it's a very high level but fairly accurate estimate in terms of what we're anticipating to spend. And then from that, we then greenlight, here are the venues that we should be talking to.
Right.
Here are the vendors that we should be talking to. I do agree with you that it's almost like allow the design conversation to also evolve. I find that sometimes couples just want certainty so quickly.
Right.
When it comes to like, well, what exactly is it going to look like? What's going to be the layout? What's the plan? What's this? And I think that just like dating, you know, you're not going to go on the first date and like reveal everything.
Have
there
your
is to
future
know
laid
about,
out, right?
you know, or have like all the answers or know this is the, you know, the perfect fit. I think it's also just allowing conversation to evolve. I think one of the biggest things, back to when we were talking about green flags, I think in conversation, if you can feel like you're able to express yourself and you're able to share your ideas and you're able to talk about money, you know, and you feel comfortable, like to me, that's a really big green flag.
I agree.
Because if you have decorators that can't have these maybe awkward conversations with you, but make them feel not awkward and just part of the routine conversation, I just think that that's a big part of it too.
Right.
Of establishing.
Yeah, and I think that comes with experience and confidence too. If a bride shows you a picture from Pinterest and I know in my head that that picture is AI generated or not attainable due to the venue or to the timing, it is my responsibility to tell them that rather than what you said is, yeah, no problem, we'll talk about it. I want to nip it in the bud immediately so that we can pull out specific things about this photo and how it made you feel, and I can present ways to you to get that aesthetic with our time constraints, with your budget limitations, rather than promising and under-delivering down the line because of those certain factors.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I have couples all the time. Like, I feel like planners are sometimes, and you know this, like you're kind of like first one to bat, you know?
Right.
It's like, so it's just like they have no clue. And oftentimes if I have couples that come to me and they're like, well, we have like $150,000 to $200,000 to spend, but we have 4 events over 3 days and we got 350 attendees.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. But because, you know, and it's no shame. It's just, again, you don't know because you're not in the industry.
Exactly.
But I'm always like, okay, well, you know, look at it from like and I've, you know, talk about this on other episodes, but it's like breaking it down from like an attendee's perspective from, you know, you're going to feed them and then you're providing decor for them. And then there's a labor cost,
right,
you know, which are a big deal. With your team specifically, how do you feel like labor or inflation today has been impacting pricing? Because obviously design proposals that we're seeing now, as opposed to even 3 years ago, are like very different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that your team, you're only as strong as your team, right? I could have beautiful florals and a beautiful mandap structure and beautiful things planned, but if you do not allocate for the right amount of labor and you try to hide it or not be upfront with it, it's never gonna work. Especially in this market where things have to be ready extremely early. We're faced with a lot of overnight setups. My labor is the most important thing to me before anything else. Petal, we come out strong. At least 25 people per project, including myself, to really make sure that in chances of inclement weather or wind outdoors, a huge issue in South Florida, that we have the team there to be able to pivot. We recently changed to a percentage base where our labor is based on a percentage of the subtotal. So the more products that you have, the more people we need to execute those line items. So that's how we articulate our labor.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that that's just fair in terms of there's so many behind the scenes that go into it. And, you know, one of the things I've noticed that's also transitioned, I don't know if this, because it's like, again, like 3 years ago, couples were coming, they're like, this is the color palette, this is the theme.
The theme. Never use the word theme.
Themes, right. It's like, oh, there's no theme. But now it's all about the vibe. Now
Yes.
It's like, this is the vibe. This is the feels I want people to feel when they're on site for our event. Like, how do you translate that into a design?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it takes time. And that's one of the first things that I say to couples is, you know, I don't know what color it's going to be right now. I just want to get a feel for how you guys are with your friends and family. What are you guys known for in your friend group? Are you guys risk takers? What is your, I've even asked a bride to take me on a tour of her closet because I couldn't pin down her personal aesthetic. And, you know, we're on a Zoom, she's wearing like a black t-shirt. I'm like, show me your house. She's like, what? I'm like, I literally want to see how you decorated your house, because I want guests to walk into a space and really feel like, oh, this is so them. I get why they made this. I'll make it beautiful. It will never be not good looking, but it needs to be representative of the couple. And that's where that vibe comes in.
Yeah.
If you're a very traditional couple that's very reserved and very, articulate and quiet, I would never be like, let's do this hot pink, crazy mirror ceiling installation. People walk in, they're like, this is not what I expected. We want guests to be surprised and shocked, but for it to make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So picking up on those vibes takes time. I would say by like the third meeting with a bride and groom, I start picking up on their social cues and how they're dressed. Meeting them in person or going out for a coffee or a wine is a great way for me to like suggest things along the way. Like, I think you guys would really like this. And usually it's a slam dunk as I get to know them, rather than, hi, my name is so-and-so. I have this much money and my colors are gold. Go. And you're like, I'll do a beautiful gold wedding that matches that price point, but it's not your wedding.
Right.
It's a gold wedding.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. And I love that you articulated it so well, because it's the same thing for us too. It's like we're kind of dating you throughout that course of that time. We're getting to know. I'm getting to know if you're like late to every meeting that we schedule. Like, I'm getting to know if you're like prompt on the dot. Like those are things that I'm definitely paying attention to. Or, are you someone that has like a lot of anxiety when we're getting on calls, and that you require a little bit more of like, just like calmness and more certainty, a little bit more details, as opposed to somebody who I work with that's like maybe a physician and they just don't have time, right? They like, give me the quick bullet points, yes, no. And I think it's part of that. I totally agree with you in terms of design. And quite frankly, if you're planning over the span of a year, especially I'm talking to all my lovely South Asian brides out there, you're attending on average like 8 to 10 weddings, social functions a year, which is a lot more than like our white dress brides. I don't have any white dress brides. I know you do.
That's right.
And so it's like your ideas also might evolve and change as you're being exposed to more too.
That's right.
I mean, how do you handle design involvement, but like someone calling you and being like, remember that time we were going to go this, in this direction? Now we want to do this. Like, how much time, energy, effort does that take a lot from you, or what does that look like?
It does. I think that the design process is organic. So people are allowed to change their minds. And I agree and I support that, because I don't want someone to feel like, well, 6 months ago I felt this way. Now I've been to 6 other weddings and this trend is fading and I want to pivot. I always welcome any kind of pivots that make you feel more, assured of your decisions, but it is a redesign. So sometimes you don't think of all the key parts that go into that. It's not just changing the color of a flower or a linen. It might involve stationery, lighting, graphics, all of that. I think it's welcomed. I always want a family to go in knowing that they made the right decision and not feeling a little about it because they didn't have time to pivot. There's always time. There's always time. And usually those changes end up paying off. They end up with happier results.
Yeah, it feels more like authentic to them because they've been able to sort of go through the motions of it. One thing I love about what your team does, and I think quite frankly, designers who aren't doing this should be stepping into this realm, is you do a lot of diagrams, even sometimes like when you're in the final phases of like, even if they haven't fully committed to you yet, you are doing layouts that match the aesthetic of what you're looking to create. Right. Is there a reason for that? Because I feel like the planner in you is also just like, does this spatially make sense? Like, do you need to like see it on paper?
I do. I think that we may be unique in the fact that our design proposals are all line itemed. So there's nothing package. So every single line item has a picture, a description, and a price. And in order to quantify all those line items, I need to be looking at a diagram to match, right? Meaning how many chairs, how many tables, the size of the tables, the quantity of the tables, are they high, are they low? So by seeing it on a diagram, it helps quantify the proposal, but it also helps run it up the chain. We talked earlier about how important it is that I support all the other vendors involved. So if I'm quoting a DJ backdrop, but I'm not consulting the DJ on the size of that backdrop, that's going to create problems for us down the line. Or if I'm quoting really cool immersive food stations, but I'm not consulting the caterer, then it's going to have to change down the line. So I suggest always floor planning first, knowing that we can make changes, and running it through the team of vendors. So then my design proposal is more accurate and more concrete.
I love that. And I think that a big tip for couples that are listening out there, if you're hiring a designer and they have not even talked to you about spatial planning, they've not even talked to you about layouts, to me, that's a red flag, because there are so many designers I've worked throughout the course of my career where I literally am having to beg them to send me a layout.
Yeah.
Like, hey, at this point, I'll just get out a Post-it note and just
right.
put a sketch
The cocktail
together.
napkin.
Because like I just, I don't know what your plan is. And so I feel like it's so important and it's such a critical piece, because one thing I love about it is, Brittany and probably other designers out there, once they create a layout, they are adding the planners as collaborators to that layout. So we're able to start going ahead and production stacking. What's the power going to be? Who needs what kind of table?
That's right.
Is the, caterer as the conversations and menu of all that she's plugged in? Is it buffet? Is it food stations? Is it tables, family style seating? Like, it's so important to have a collaborative approach. And it's like, ultimately, if you have one person that's delaying the process, it's very difficult to plan in that way.
And I think too, for couples that have a lot of family members involved in the planning process, it's really nice to have a spatial layout, especially for the wedding day, so that everyone can look at and help point out red flags. Like, remember, grandma is in a wheelchair. We need to make this aisle wider. That affects cost. That affects, the amount of chairs. Or it'll help gauge your demographics, right? At a Sangeet, I always like to do less than 50% seating. I want people up and dancing, right? You can have XYZ amount of seats. Some couples come back to us and they're like, actually, the wedding is mostly older people, so we need to up the seating. And if every chair comes with a price point, that's going to increase your costs. So let's get ahead of that, start with floor plans, and then fill in with line items.
Yeah, I love that. And that makes so much sense. And really back to even just when you're designing, like cueing your designer into, important notes. Like there was many, I think it was probably 8 years ago, like kind of in the beginning of my career, we had a bride that was doing a dual ceremony. So she had a Hindu ceremony, but then she had a Christian ceremony to follow. Well, she didn't really cue anyone in that, like, this wasn't just like a beautiful dress, right? This was like a huge dress. Like it was like a massive skirt. So like the 8-foot aisle with like the lining floating candles wasn't
They're going down.
Like they're going down. But nobody really recognized that until it was too late. And so it's so important too that for couples who want to be involved in the design, like those are the type of cue-ins that I think that could be really supportive for you to like layer in as part of your conversations with your hired designer is, what are you wearing? Who is walking you down the aisle? Because Brittany does ask these questions like, how many people are walking you down? Because sometimes it's two uncles, sometimes it's the dad, sometimes the brothers come, sometimes you have the dupata or whatever. I forget what that structure is called.
The covering.
I'm going to think of it later. Oh my gosh, I forgot. But it's important to like layer in those pieces as well. Because I could think of story after story of little snags that we've run into through the years that all could have been prevented through having spatial plan like predetermined and pre-discussed.
Yeah.
And pro tip also, if you don't have your designer involved yet and you're contracting with a venue, have them throw a sample diagram together of like stage, dance floor, the amount of seating, because you would be surprised. I love my venues, but they're always trying to cram too many people in there. They say they can fit 350 and I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you can't.
And I think too that the days are long gone of a stage with the bride and groom sitting on it.
Yeah.
A dance floor and 40 round tables, 20 on one side, 20 on the other. I really try to encourage the floor plan to be part of the design. Use interesting table shapes. Draw inspiration from your favorite restaurants and how those restaurants are laid out, right? It's, encouraging soft seating instead of just a sea of 500 chairs and everyone sitting in the same way. And that can really elevate the design to the next level by doing somewhat out of the norm, right? If you're a hotel, most hotels are going to include round tables and round tables only, but don't limit yourself to that. Yes, you can still have your traditional round tables for your parents or for, aunties, but really get creative. You could have seating like this and a table in front and really elevate the guest experience by not sticking everybody around a circle table.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so it doesn't necessarily take that you have to just spend money in every single direction. It can be just coming from like the unique layout or how you're positioning things that in.
Right.
What is your approach? Because, I have to talk about multicultural and, multi-day events. I mean, obviously that's what we specialize in and what we work together a lot on. How do you approach a weekend like that? Is it always, let me see how I can create a cohesive look so I'm able to, because a big thing that couples are always saying is maybe we can repurpose and reuse.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of repurpose, reuse. In Florida, it depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
Because your flowers will otherwise be very sad.
That's
the next
right.
day.
That's right.
What's your stance on that? How do you go about creating a unique guest experience from like event to event to event?
Everyone in my office is going to kill me right now for saying this, but I am the queen of repurposing. And oftentimes it gets me in trouble because it's a very value added service. It's a lot of money. It's an investment, and I don't want the flowers to just go to waste. They're going to go right back on a truck or, into the garbage, quite frankly. But you just have to trust that I will make the right decision for you. So, for example, if you have a wedding ceremony at 9 a.m. with all white hydrangea, Brittany's going to make me have that wedding ceremony ready at 7:30 a.m. So those hydrangeas have now been in the sun for 6 hours through pictures. So now during your lunch, I'm moving this white hydrangea into the ballroom. That hydrangea is probably not going to look the best. So if repurposing is super important to you, or we need to repurpose in order to meet our investment guidelines, I would perhaps suggest a flower that can take the heat, like a tropical or like a greenery heavy, and know that I can always refresh it. One thing that I love to do and I think is really wise is repurpose Sangeet florals into ceremony lunch. I think that is a really easy transition that doesn't scream repurposing, because a lot of times it would be smaller pieces mixed in with candles and things like that, and we're able to protect it from the elements.
I love that you do that, by the way, because I think a lot of designers, and again, I'm not hating on other decorators out there. I think it's all bandwidth and labor and, how much team and staff. And quite frankly, you might be like exhausted because you're like, I've been working like 8 hours straight. I don't have time to repurpose. But I love that the lunch, because for me, it was like the post-ceremony lunch sort of felt very much like food hall-y. It was like, we just need to get people fed. We just need to provide the hospitality so that we said that we did. And they're, it's part of their guest experience. And now I'm like, let's maybe put this much effort more into the lunch, and it not to feel like a food hall, and to just feel like maybe let's ask the DJ to throw in some background music. Maybe let's have some floral put on the tables, but it's like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. But I really value and appreciate, and again, like another vendor green flag, is that they're coming to the table with ideas of how can you maximize the investment that you're making with them.
And I think too, the emotion coming off a ceremony is very, very high. So I want to keep that emotion going from ceremony through the break into cocktail hour and reception. So if you have a beautiful ceremony and then it's like, all right, we're done now, go eat and I'll see you in a couple hours, I want to keep that momentum going. So minimal investment, but high intention for post-ceremony lunch will keep that momentum going throughout the day. So people are still going to go nap.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not going to nap.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like an afterthought.
Yeah.
It keeps it going.
Yeah. One of the things that I feel like is on the rise and just in demand, I mean, Florida obviously is a market that is already a big destination wedding. I would say 80% of the couples that I work with do not live in Florida. Like they're coming here for a wedding, and we're kind of that boots on the ground team that are here to basically fulfill what they're really looking for from a local perspective. I know that our team travels. I know Petals travels.
Yes.
How do you bring your systems and framework to wherever you might be going? I know you're off to Charleston soon. Your team's going to Montana. Like, how are you able to do that and streamline that process?
Yeah, I think just the integrity of our company culture does not change when we leave the South Florida market. We really travel with a strong team, up sometimes with full production, upwards of 60 individuals will do a destination event, anything from carpeting and draping to lighting, and of course the floral work, all spearheaded by myself and my colleagues. And I think that it's really the attention to detail and the level of service. Whereas, just like we talked about earlier in the conversation, keeping everything under one umbrella where I have your best intention, I can take that and drop it into another market and still fulfill those promises and those expectations.
Yeah.
And I also really love transforming new spaces. I find it super refreshing to see a venue for the first time, and I think about it differently. And I try not to sleuth online and see what everyone else has done to the venue. I go in with looking at no pictures of how the room has been laid out and see what comes to mind. And somebody will be like, well, that's weird. We've never done that before. I'm like, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, you're on to something. You're on to something.
Because we know our venues that we work at a lot here, they're always laid out the same because we know what works and what we feel comfortable with. But when you're walking into a space for the first time, the sky's the limit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember when Indian weddings were definitely on the rise and we started specializing that, which we did not anticipate to specialize. But here we are, 10 years, myself, 15 years later with Indian weddings. And I would go to spaces, I'd be like, okay, well, where's the Bharat path? Where are we working this? I'm like, oh, the parking lot? I'm like, I don't know. And it's so interesting because you're right. I mean, when you look at a venue from a different set of eyes and a different lens, I think it does bring a level of creativity. And, I often get the question of okay, well, why wouldn't I hire a planner local to that state? Certainly if it's a budget constraint, completely understand. If it's something that you just ultimately feel you want to work with someone local, that makes sense. So I'm not hating on that. I think that in this industry, there's no barrier to entry.
Right.
There's no degree being passed out. It's your experience. It's how much you've been essentially in the trenches.
Right.
How long have you been doing this line of work that is going to really maintain the overall investment that the clients are going to spend? Because in my opinion, you essentially get one time to get it right. There are no dress rehearsals. And so really making sure that you pick the best team is such an important part of it.
That's right. I think that improv is a huge part of our day-to-day, especially in live event weekends, that is not talked about enough. You cannot teach that in a class. You cannot teach that in a seminar. It just comes with experience. So when traveling, right, there and doing destinations, there's oftentimes a lot more improv because you're trying things for the first time. And it sounds scary, but it's exciting because if it has not been done before and it's being done for you or for your family, you become the Pinterest board, right? It's not a copy and paste. So by pushing the limits and doing something a little bit different, it becomes uniquely yours. A lot of times I get the question of, well, I'm a visual person. How do I know what it's going to look like? How come I can't see a picture? And yes, we do AI renders and 3D renders sometimes when necessary, and that's helpful for myself as well. But I try to leave my brides with, if a picture does not exist, that is because it's being done for you for the first time. And that's incredibly exciting. Yeah. And then other brides are going to be pinning and saving your pictures.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I will say one thing that you are definitely downplaying on is my favorite day, which is the design experience day.
Yes.
Where if you're able to come to her studio, of being able to have the napkins and the different chairs and the different
It's the
lighting,
best.
and you know, you come in, there's like champagne set for you, and you're able to see like the studio, and to me, that's also the difference between someone who's decorating your event and someone who's designing it, because you're going to be able to see, oh, there's like a whole team backing Brittany to make this event a success and to make this event actually happen.
So the Petal headquarters and offices, we recently moved into a new space last September, and it was really important for us to have the real estate to be able to not just show families, here's a round table, here's your centerpiece. Do you like it? See you in a couple of months. But to really transform these studio spaces in our offices where people feel the vibe, right? Yeah. They feel like they stepped into a corner of their event, and how does it make them feel? Mm-hmm. And those meetings are incredibly important. They usually take 2 to 3 hours. We eat, we drink, we laugh, there's music. For a multi-day event, there's multiple rooms that you pass through, so you're feeling the culmination of all events, right? Yeah. Come in, we start with maybe a welcome party, how you feel. You see the colors, the flowers, then we progress into ceremony and then into reception, and you can really feel how the entire event weekend makes sense together, and how it makes you feel is the most important. It's a really, really fun day. And I do it for myself.
Yeah.
Just as much as I do it for the bride, because I might be thinking of pushing the envelope on something. So the samples are just as important to me because I find out if it works or not.
Yeah. I feel like if you could literally bring in like live entertainment to these things, you would.
I would. There might be a parakeet in an upcoming sample.
Oh my God, I love that.
It was funny. A couple weeks ago, I was doing a sample, and the groom talked about grooms that are super involved, and he's like, oh, I could see him in the corner with his scotch, and he's like tapping his foot. I'm like, what's wrong? Tell me. He's like, it's just feeling very feminine in here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you know, and I could tell he felt like he wasn't being represented with all the pink and everything. He's like, and I was like, you know, I kind of feel like there's a part of myself that's not in this space. And I'm like, I can totally understand that. And thanks for speaking up, right? Speak up now. And so we were playing around with darker tones and ways to introduce like masculine vibes to the tablescape. I had a leather belt on. I took a pair of scissors, cut my belt, and used it as a napkin ring. He goes, that's it, perfect. And it worked. And sure enough, now I had to find 500 brown leather belt napkin rings.
You guys, this is really what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. This is Brittany Unscripted.
Yeah.
It is literally having someone that, like you said, it's improv. It is.
Right.
But to some degree also that knows what's missing and can quickly identify and speak to that. And quite frankly, good for that groom.
For being vocal.
For being able to also be vocal, be vulnerable with your vendors too. Yeah. Like if I present you a timeline and you're like, my mother-in-law ain't gonna show up at 5
Right, right.
She's not gonna be there. She's gonna be
exactly.
You know, be honest, because it's like the last thing I want to do is try to create an event experience with you that's also just like not realistic.
That's right.
For the occasion either.
And two, sometimes at that samples, I would say, you know, 8 out of 10 of them are slam dunks, right? And I walk in, I'm like, so is there anything you'd like to see more of or anything you'd like to change? And most of the time it's, no, I love it. You know, and then we run through everything and it takes some time to go through each line item. But I encourage people, you're not going to hurt my feelings. This is a image that was snapshot from, you know, Pinterest or from an old mood board or whatnot, and this is it live. You might not like it how you see it, or it might not be exactly what you were thinking. So I think that transparency is super important. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Let's get it right. That's why we're doing it, so that there's no surprises the day of.
I've literally had the parents of the groom come for a sample set. I don't know if you remember this. And the mom walks in and she saw like an event that you guys were prepping to like go out. Yeah. And she saw this floral arrangement and she was like,
I want that instead.
She was like, I want that. She hadn't even gone into the design room yet. Yeah. Like hadn't even seen the sample set, but she's like, somehow we need to have this incorporated.
Exactly.
Because it was just, and that's really, I think, the best part of being able to have this one-on-one time with you as well, is that you're able to curate something a little bit different that sometimes, you know, again, you don't get the luxury, I'll say, of coming in, but it's also like if you're traveling and you're able to kind of put together like different experiences for clients, just depending on what they're looking for, so that they can still have that tangible experience.
Exactly. And my team is sick and tired of me using this analogy, but I like to think about it that the flowers are the little black dress. That's your outfit. The jewelry is all of the other hard goods that are going to make that little black dress go one way or the other. So for example, you can wear a black dress with a pair of stilettos, with a pair of Converse, with a pair of, white tennis shoes, and all the looks of that dress change. So if you think about your flowers as the outfit, what jewelry are you gonna put on that helps take it one direction or not? And that jewelry is, of course, the vases and the candle holders and all of that, which I have everything displayed on racks in my showroom so you can go and pick it. But it's also the chair, the linen, the charger, what the floors of the venue look like. So that sample is really important because some people might think that they're in like the natural wood camp, where I want it to be very garden style, very natural wood, very blonde wood. But then all of a sudden they see a gold chair and they're like, I need the gold chair now. And it's okay to mix those jewelries, right? How many times do you see in fashion people mixing metals, right? Gold earrings, bangles. So you can't try on the jewelry until you're wearing the dress.
Right.
So at that sample, don't get bogged down on a particular chair that you have to have until you see that chair with the flowers and you get the whole outfit.
Yeah, I completely resonate with that because people forget that the wedding industry is very much a lifestyle brand industry.
Right.
It's,
Smart.
It's fashion, it's hair and makeup, it's all these things. I was listening recently to a podcast within our industry, and she nailed it when she essentially was saying the only thing that's really wedding is the outfit, like the wedding dress.
Right.
And it's like, that's so true. It's culinary experience, it's decor, it's design. And so it really is a lifestyle. And so looking at it from that perspective is actually incredibly helpful for brides. I hope that when they are starting to put those pieces together, it's essentially what aesthetic are you trying to create?
That's right.
And Brittany, obviously I'd love to keep you here all day.
I could stay forever.
And chat. But I had a couple things that I wanted to end on, which is, for couples that are in the beginning stages, is there any particular mindset that you think is supportive for them to go into when they're maybe beginning the consultation process with new potential vendors for their design?
Yeah. I would say don't get bogged down by the details this early in the game. If I have curated a mood board for you with this particular chair or flower on it that you absolutely do not like, it's okay to address that, but don't feel like you need to fill in the gap with the right answer. That will come organically. Again, with my house comparison, sometimes it takes people years to decorate their house because they haven't found the right dining table yet. It's better to wait to find the dining table that speaks to you, that you're like, that was the cherry on top, oh my gosh, than force it too early on. I will let you know when you need to make decisions and have deadlines, especially with custom items, but you don't need to have all the answers on that first date.
Yeah, I love that because that really does, I feel like, hopefully take some of the pressure off.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like the design contractor, the vendor is in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but it's kind of the only vendor that there's not like a consult, proposal, sign, boom, done. Of course, there's a consult, high-level design, an estimate, a engagement. Yes, we're working together, but it's not like this is the services, this is what you're getting. Now we're done and we'll talk in a year.
It's very fluid.
Right.
It's very fluid, and it's based on trends and availability too. A chair is a chair, a sofa is a sofa. If we don't find a sofa that you like, I'll custom make it for you. However, the florals is, a live resource, right? With tariffs and seasonability and everything, we really have to be able to have fluid and hard conversations in terms of accessibility and seasonality.
What would be, and maybe your answer is flowers, but what would be sort of like the one design element that you feel like is sort of like a non-negotiable when you're looking into planning a social function, because I've seen trending lately has been, and I keep hearing from couples all the time, is like, I just want a venue that has beautiful architecture,
Right.
that I don't need to do a lot to, and I can just bring in lighting. And I'm like, well, that lighting is production lighting,
Yeah.
and it comes with a very high price tag, and we're not like looking to throw some up lights on the wall and like little beams of light. But I am a big advocate that maybe not there has to be floral at every single function, but I do feel like, especially for a wedding or a social celebration, like there should be some flowers. I mean, what's your take on that?
I've done events that have 0 flowers that I'm very, very proud of. I would say it has to have personality. So if an event has 0 floral, it should still have a voice. Whether that voice is candlelight or texture or color or architecture of the venue. So you could absolutely get away with events that have no floral, but those events have to be strong, and you really have to lean in to color or candle or some other material that's really going to leave people talking, because they'll talk that there was no floral. So whatever you're subbing in that floral with has to be strong and has to have a personality.
Yeah, and it's going to be like the next day brunch.
Yeah.
That they're either talking about like, oh my God, they didn't have a single floral and it looked fabulous.
Exactly.
Or it's going to be like, oh, there was like a miss.
Right.
And so having that fine balance.
It has to look intentional.
Yeah.
Like they intentionally did not use flowers. Wow, that was interesting in a positive way. So lean in.
Yeah.
If you're going to say, I'm going to do a Sangeet with not one single flower, or a welcome party that doesn't have flowers, lean in hard, and however many candles you think you need, double it.
Yeah.
Because that's how many you really need.
Truth. Truth. You know, any advice for the rise in destination weddings that you're seeing for couples? Just in general, like if you have a couple that's planning in a destination, maybe it's not Florida, maybe it is just anywhere around the globe, maybe it's European, like or Europe, what would you recommend as far as things for them to consider or think about that maybe they're not thinking about? I always say, like, I always like to end my podcast with like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what advice do you have for couples?
I think this is a negative and a positive when thinking about destination. I think that destination weddings, especially abroad, really limit your guest count. Right? Let's say
Maybe in a good way.
So if you had a wedding in your hometown where you would have to invite 500 people, that 500 people for food and beverage and decor and seating, it really dilutes the wow factor if you're stuck with strict budget guidelines. By taking that event abroad, maybe only 150 come. So those individual 150 guests are going to have a different experience, right? Whether it's the swag in the welcome bag, the dinner, the level of champagne on the bar, etc. Things are just more concentrated the lower the guest count. So a lot of feedback I hear is that people do push their weddings abroad or destination to help limit all of those like sympathy invites. Yeah. Like I was really close with my high school guidance counselor and they live down the street. They have to come to the wedding.
Right.
Oh, they don't.
Right. I've had the mailman invite.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
You don't need to be there.
And I also really love, and this is selfish, but I love being at the helm of a destination event because my team is locked in. There's nowhere else for us to go, right? Like we are there. We are on that beach in Mexico servicing you. In Miami, we could have multiple events a day. So we're not going to do multiple destinations a day. So you really have a locked-in crew that has less distractions, even, to be quite honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's like you kind of like bought them for the weekend.
Exactly.
Bought us for the weekend.
Exactly.
You know?
Keep us close on property, and we'll repurpose anything.
I completely agree about the guest count because I will say I don't know if it's a post-COVID thing or just that couples, including grooms, are even getting a little bit more involved in the conversations. I've noticed that there's this shift where I'm less working with just the parents.
Yeah.
And I am working with either just the couple or the couple and maybe like one set of parents. And I think that they are trying to be a little bit more intentional with the amount of people that they invite because quite frankly, when we run budget scenarios and we drop it by 100 people, I mean, it's like thousands and thousands
That's
and
right.
thousands of dollars
Yeah.
in savings.
A drop in 50 guests could be the difference between a ceiling installation or not.
Right. Right.
So those are really important things to consider. And I think that the new generation is really taking control. They're educated and they're not just, oh, my mom and dad are going to plan it, because they know best.
Right.
The resources out there are resulting in a more educated bride and groom that are in their early 20s.
Yeah, because I have some couples now that are doing like large engagement parties where everybody is invited, or an after wedding weekend where everyone's invited, but they're able to really hone in and curate an experience, because some of these food and beverage line items that we see, I'm like, just in the first 2 sections, we're already at the budget. We haven't even actually made it to the fun part. And I think that sometimes can be a reason for destination weddings as well, which is really great.
Yeah. Big fan of the destination.
Love it. Thank you so much.
It was my
Brittany,
pleasure.
for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your storytelling and your energy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go look at real estate now. I'm like obsessed with a house analogy.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Bye.